good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you're tuning in from. This is Epiq Thursdays again with Aman. This Thursday is just after 5 p.m. here in Dubai. I've got a super guest who is from a country that is actually, everyone's mind as far as we are concerned in the UAE, which is Israel. And Joe is actually in Israel since February. So our first guest from there, and I'll say a few words about him. But I mean, for those of you that are tuning in for Epiq Thursdays for the first time, it's the show that we've been running for several months now. We kind of talk about all topics that are related to peak performance, optimal performance, longevity, and wellness, and connect with people from across the world to understand, what are the habits, the protocols, the routines that peak performers in all walks of life, kind of have in their armory that perhaps is not visible on the front stage that allows them to perform at their highest level and live a happier and fulfilled life. Our guest today, our special guest, I would say, is Joe. Joe Cohen is an amazing person. I actually had the pleasure of seeing him speak at a summit, a biohacker summit in Helsinki in 2017. But a bit of background, Joe is a biotech entrepreneur. He's a biohacker, the CEO of SelfDecode. As a kid, he suffered from inflammation, brain fog, fatigue, digestive problems, depression, and other issues that were poorly understood in conventional mainstream medicine. And frustrated by the lack of information and tools, he decided to embark on a journey of experimentation, self-experimentation, and self-learning so he can improve his health. Something that has since become known as biohacking. Of course, for those of us who are biohackers, will connect with that. And after creating, I would say, the biohacker's ultimate, resource, an excellent website called SelfHack, he recently moved to found another platform called SelfDecode, which is a platform that is focused on DNA and lab-based health analysis. And today it helps thousands of users improve their health. So with that, let's kind of switch the attention from me to our special guest today, who is Joe. Joe, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
So Joe, I mean, help us understand, you had an amazing life in terms of the experience. You had this reflection, this, deep insight. I need to move from waiting for others to help me, but I need to kind of take matters into my own hands. So help us understand a bit of the backstory there.
So, yeah, I mean, I think it was clear that conventional medicine wasn't catered to someone like me. I don't think it's catered to a lot of people, but, essentially it was, I didn't have any disease, so that I basically fell through the cracks of conventional medicine, but I still wasn't optimal. And I figured that, you could not have a disease, but you could still not be optimally healthy, right? Whereas there's no such thing really in medicine. If you're healthy, there's, you're either, it's an on or off switch, either, sorry, either you're, you have a disease or you're healthy, right? It's binary. Whereas in my world, there's there's a lot of shades of gray. So I knew I even if I didn't have a disease, I wasn't optimally healthy, and I need to understand the root causes. And that's what led me to genetics, because I realized, hey, genetics is the blueprint of, of who we are. And, it has a lot to say and a lot of traits and conditions. And, it makes sense that, there's a lot of studies coming out on genetics. And so it made sense for me to start looking at my genetics to get a deeper understanding of how my body works and what to do about it.
So, I mean, when you started doing that, and of course you founded this amazing platform, SelfDecode, what were your, I guess, biggest insights? I mean, what did help you understand, which you thought, the mainstream mass customization models of, medicine and mainstream nutrition were not helping you understand?
Well, when you read through the research on what different conditions come from, you get a lot of insights from that, but you don't know how exactly it always applies to you. But when you read the genetics, what I found was that there was a very strong research connection between what you read in general research and then what you read in the genetics research. The genetics research is really just it's part and parcel in explaining where conditions come from and what the root causes of conditions are. And you see that in a lot of things that the researchers use genetics as trying to find like causal trying to find connections between different things. So they might look at lab markers, and they'll also look at genetics, and and they'll do studies as well. But they'll often they'll look at genetics and say, this association also exists. Like for example, if you want to know, they might study, let's say, obesity or any kind of condition, and they're doing research on what obesity comes from biologically, right? And they'll often support their position by saying, either by some drug that targets that area and saying when people were given this drug. um, they could do it by animal studies, uh, like knockout studies. So when this animal didn't have this gene, this is what happens. And then they also do it based on association studies, where they say people with different variations of this gene, we see changes in weight, right? And so there's a lot of lines of evidence that researchers use to connect different pathways to or genes to different conditions or different health areas. And so it's really important. I'm doing a lot of research on this stuff, and then I'm seeing that not only is it elucidating what is going on, but it's also helping to understand what you could do about it, because everything you do essentially interacts with your genes one way or another. It changes expression. It alters the gene in one way or another, which is why, or the protein that it's produced by the gene, right? So that's why drugs work, or medicines, or herbals, or supplements. They're making a change in the body either by affecting a protein or by affecting genetic expression. And if what the root causes of your problem is, you can better know what are the right therapies to do about it. So it's very known that most treatments don't work for most people, even if something's FDA approved or whatever. SSRIs does not work for most people with depression, but it might work slightly more than placebo. So there are some people that it helps, but most people with depression are not significantly helped by it, um, beyond the placebo. And so what you see in these kinds of things, and often they'll give you different kinds of drugs, uh, you know, and the reason is because everyone's genetics is built differently. And same with the natural stuff. Not always does every natural treatment work for everything, right? A lot of people have to try a lot of different things. And my idea was I was going to try as many things as possible, but there's a limitation on that, right? You don't want to just uh, hit a golf ball in the dark and hoping to, eventually you might get it in the hole, but um, you want some kind of guidance. You want some kind of light on where exactly you need to hit, and then you can much more easily uh, aim in the right direction. And you still might have to shoot a few times, but it's not like you're just going in the dark. So it's really important to know your genetics, and even more important, how different kinds of therapies can interact with your genetics.
So, I mean, what we're, I guess, looking at is, precision medicine, personalized medicine, and like in the show, we often kind of figure, what can we take from the theoretical, the lab, to the actual practical element. So, from someone who's actually watching this and saying, okay, fine, I understand the logic. It's going to be more specific, going to help me get better because it's more targeted. Um, what is the sort of, I guess, path you would recommend? Is it like form of testing? Is it like doing some sort of diagnostics that help them figure first what they're made up of before they start identifying what routes to take, or what are the possible options available to them?
Yeah. So, and by the way, like in terms of myself, I think you asked before what were the specifics. It's important to not. It's important to realize that everybody is going to have their own genes that they need to be most educated on, right? In my case, a few important genes were related to gut health, like CNR1. And there was some related to brain, and and everybody has different genes that are important for them. So I think that's important to know. You know, you can, if I give you the genes that were important to me, it's going to be different for someone else, right? And so, yeah, I think that's just important to set out. Now, in terms of how are they going to get started on this path, the first thing you have to do is get your genetics sequenced, and you know, whichever company offers a good chip, like you need it to be comprehensive. It needs to be at least, you know, 600,000 700,000 SNPs or whole genome or whatever it is. We provide something like that. Um, and so that's the first thing. You need to get a sequence. Next thing is you need the proper software in order to tell you, in order to identify the genes that are problematic for you, or that are increasing your risk in a certain way. And then find um, you need to find the therapies that can counteract that genetic risk. And so, when using a software, you need to make sure that they're giving recommendations, or else you're not going to get anything useful. And then also, they're identifying the specific genes and backing it up with evidence, right? So there are some softwares that don't put references, and that's something that you want to exclude. There's some that are not comprehensive, and so if they're only looking at a few dozen SNPs or even a few hundred, it's not comprehensive enough. And you also, I think, this is a personal, thing, is that I'd want to know exactly how different things are working, but that's optional, I'd say. And then you have to make sure that um, in terms of that the if a company is giving recommendations, that they're basing it on many genes, not just one. So you'll see a lot, one recommendation per one gene, and that can get very confusing, which is why we
Mm.
have our reports. They have they're prioritized based on all the genes in your report, and it goes based on topics, because that's another thing, is you can't. There's no such thing as just looking at all your genes as a whole and finding what the best thing is. You have to go down by the topic. You have to see, okay, what topics am I interested in, or do I have a problem with, and then you can see the best recommendations, and also the genes help you prioritize which recommendations you should try first.
So in the past, something like this would have taken a long time, would have costed a truckload of money, right? I'm guessing this is now becoming more easier to access, and it's kind of faster to process, and it's more cheaper to kind of, I guess, do. So I mean, help me understand, I guess, as a umbrella view, like how long does this process take, and how much, I guess, investment should one be making in this? I'm sorry.
So there's not that much investment to be making. You got to get your kit, which is sub $100, right? So that's not a huge investment. Um, if you want a whole genome, it's going to be more money, but right now you can't really get more value from it, significantly more value from it. But um, so let's say it's $100 to get your genetics sequenced, and then you got to just pay for the software. Everyone's different, to access um, all of our a bunch of our reports. It's $97 currently, and essentially, so it's sub $200. You get access to all the software and the hard and the data, right?
Yep.
um yeah, I mean, there's a lot of things that are making it more accessible right now. First of all, the cost of sequencing is going down a lot, and soon whole genome is going to be $99, and or sub $100 in not too long. Uh, and so the cost of sequencing is going down a lot. The the number of studies published in the scientific arena are going up, right? Every day there's studies published. many studies published, and so they're getting a better understanding of how these things work. And then there's also a lot of, over time, more studies are published on natural stuff, whereas 20 years ago, you didn't really have much things that were published on natural stuff. So I think that's also a factor, right? Because you don't only just want to take drugs, or
Mm.
you want to understand how exercise works, right? So uh, 20, 30 years ago, there just wasn't as much studies on even exercise or
Mm.
anything natural, right? So there is more money being spent on that, and obviously there's also the internet and um, uh, you know data connections and infrastructure. A lot of these things make it easier, and AI as well, for software to be able to analyze a lot of information. So there's a lot of things that are coming together that um, make it an ideal time to get your genetics analyzed and sequenced and analyzed.
Yeah, I mean, it's remarkable, right? I mean, with the cost that we're looking at, as you said, even the whole full body genome is going to be coming down pretty remarkably. So for us to not do it is kind of really, I guess, in some sense criminal, because you're kind of losing down the chance of trying to learn more about what you can do for your body and for your overall health. And I think that's insane with the kind of price reduction that we are seeing. Now, what have you, when you've been working with companies, with individuals, etc., it would be useful perhaps in a few words or maybe in a couple of sentences to understand what was a remarkable insight that people were getting that perhaps their general either physicians or their general reports were not telling them, that helped change the trajectory of their life and allowed them to kind of say, okay, you know what, I was completely going down, as you said, playing golf with my hat, bloopers on, but now I've discovered something, and it's I'm not going back.
Yeah, there's a lot of stories, situations that have occurred like that, where people gain insights that really make them rethink different things. Um, we tell a lot of stories in our email list. Like we send emails and we tell different stories like that. But
Mm,
yeah, so I mean, it would take a long time to go into a bunch of the stories, but um, essentially, there's many people like the place that genetics is at right now is there's a lot of information that can help you understand your body. The reason why conventional genetics doesn't deal with that is because it needs to be 99.9% certain about something working beyond the placebo, or something being true, definitively true, right? Um, and and that's why they have large studies and they're very costly. When it comes to genetics, they analyze bulk amounts of information with GWAS studies and other kinds of studies. It's like
mm,
bulk data, but it's not, for the most part, it's not proven 100%. So you're having a lot of information that is, kind of 90% likely to be true. And what we're doing is taking in that information and making a probabilistic guess, as to your risks, or um, what natural approach you're likely to do better on. And so if you take the approach of, okay, this is not 100% proven, but it's likely true, or that it's giving me the best options to try out first, then that's the right approach to take. And then you can try a few different things out. Whereas, if when you're dealing with conventional medicine, if you're making mistakes, it could be life threatening. So it's very, very conservative conventional medicine, and moves very, very slowly. Whereas
mm.
the alternative medicine, or just non-conventional, is is more comfortable working within a framework of uncertainty, but taking probabilistic guesses.
I want to finish up because we're almost out of time, and I know that you're, Mr. Biohacker. That's kind of the origin story. I'd love to understand more about maybe, your closing remarks. Uh, Three, I guess, optimal health, hacks, protocols you would recommend people take that would help them uh, become a better version of themselves and I guess get more on that peak performance journey?
Yeah, the first thing I would say is make sure you have the right data, right? And that's really important because you don't want to go blind. And I think that everyone uh, everyone has different things that help them, right? If there was something that helped everybody, then literally everybody would just take it or do it, right? Everyone has different experiences and everyone is helped by different things. And so, if somebody has some kind of mood issue or depression or anxiety, not there isn't one approach to fix everyone's issues. Everyone has different, um, different things that work for them, right? So it's it's important to realize that you need data in order to find out what works best for you. And the types of data that you would need is genetics and lab tests. Lab tests are more expensive, but genetics is a no-brainer, right? It's a one-time fee,
Mm-hmm.
and for under $100, you can get so much data. It's really like the equivalent of spending like $500,000 on lab tests. I mean, you know, um, the lab tests are useful. I recommend those as well. But the thing is that the genetics, in terms of cost, is so
Yeah.
much cheaper because you know um, they're checking. You could see millions of different data points in your genetics, whereas just one data point in a lab marker for one period of time is going to cost you, you know, whatever, 50, $100, whereas genetics, you're getting those millions of data points that don't really change, meaning these are the types of variants that you have and that they predispose your genes to work in these ways, right? So I think data data driven approach to your health is number one.
Mm-hmm.
However, that's broad. It can include tracking devices, lab tests, genetics, and then specifically number two, I would say uh, getting your genetics sequenced, and number three, and even if you don't do anything, I think it's still worth while having it. Um, you just it's just it's like, let's say COVID, for example. It affects, it negatively affects, there's a lot of genes related to COVID, right? And if you already have it, I mean, sending it out, getting a sample, buying, I mean, that whole process could take a month and a half or something like that. It could take some time. Whereas if you just have it, you can instantly upload it somewhere and get information, right? So you could actually look at your blood type with your genetics, and there's so much information that you could get. So blood type A plus or A is going to be much higher risk from COVID. So it's just this thing that you have. It's kind of like, anything could happen. You can just instantly look up information.
Mm-hmm.
So it makes sense to have it, and then if you ever need to use it for finding out information, you can. So that's getting your genetic sequence, number two. And then the other thing is using a platform that analyzes that information and is able to give you recommendations. My platform is SelfDecode, but I think anyone, I think it's important to start analyzing and really understanding your body more.
Fascinating. Well, I think what you brought up towards the end is kind of very intriguing because I think if people have a window into their health because they have the data points, they can make more intelligent decisions, as you said, and not wait for expensive tests that perhaps take much longer to kind of get approvals for and everything else.
Exactly.
Joe, pleasure speaking with you. Thank you very much for your time. I think for people to learn more about you, I think your website, selfdecode.com, is that the best resource?
Yes, definitely.
Okay, so we'll drop that in the comments afterwards, so that at least people can go and check out what your offerings are, the platform that you offer, and the services there. Because I think what you do is brilliant, and especially in the connected world that we live in, having access to those data points is not just a privilege; it's probably a basic human right. Joe, pleasure speaking with you. Enjoy the rest of your day over there in Tel Aviv, and look forward to hopefully connecting with you as your journey continues. Take care. Thank
Okay,
you.
awesome. Take care.